My name is Harrison Price. I'm 32 years old, a former professional football player who is now retired and transitioned into the world of business. If I had to sum up my life, it would be a journey full of turbulence, from the days of fending for myself in a less than harmonious family to the glorious highs and painful lows. But to tell you my story, I want to start from the beginning, back to my childhood days in St. Louis, Missouri, where I grew up with scars not only on my body but also in my soul. I was born into a middle-class family, but that middle-class label was only skin deep. My father, Samuel Price, was a salesman, always dreaming of landing big contracts but rarely succeeding. He loved to boast, from the suits he wore to the exaggerated stories about his connections. My mother, Victoria, was obsessed with luxury, dresses, handbags, extravagant parties, but our family's budget could never sustain her desires. They lived as if they were trying to prove something to the world, but to me, a kid back then, all I saw was the pretense and the smiles they exchanged in front of the neighbors. I have a younger brother, Kyle, who is 6 years my junior. Kyle was my parents' pride and joy, not because he was particularly accomplished, but because he had a silver tongue. Kyle knew how to say sweet words, make my parents laugh, and make them feel like they were perfect parents. Meanwhile, I was a rough, awkward kid, clumsy with words, burying myself in schoolwork and odd jobs to afford books and supplies. My parents often looked at me with irritation, as if I were a mismatched piece of furniture in the home they so carefully curated. I found joy in football. From the age of 10, I clung to that leather ball as if it were my entire world. The field was where I could be myself, where I didn't have to hear my parents' complaints. I joined the school team, and soon enough I became one of the standout players. The runs, the tackles, the roar of the crowd, it all fueled me, helping me forget the sense of alienation I felt in my own home. But my parents didn't see it that way. To them, football was dangerous, foolish, not worth the sweat or blood of their son. I vividly remember one summer day when I was 16, a day I think will stay etched in my heart forever. It was a crucial game for my school team, a regional championship. I played my heart out, scoring 2 touchdowns and helping the team secure the victory. But in a collision near the end of the game, I dislocated my shoulder. The pain was searing, but I gritted my teeth, thinking that at least my parents would be worried, that they'd rush to hug me, comfort me. I was wrong. When I got home, my right arm in a sling, my father barely glanced at me before saying coldly, "I told you not to play that damn sport. How stupid are you, Harrison?" My mother was even worse. She sat on the couch, shaking her head in disappointment as if I'd done something shameful. No words of concern, no hugs, just blame. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my shoulder still throbbing. I wondered what I'd done wrong to make my parents hate me so much. Meanwhile, Kyle, my 10-year-old brother, was being cuddled by my mother just for telling a lame joke. I wasn't jealous of Kyle, but I craved to be loved, to be acknowledged the way they did for him. I told myself that maybe if I tried harder, won more trophies, they'd change. I was that naive. My childhood years passed in self-reliance. I worked all sorts of jobs to earn money, delivering newspapers, washing cars, even working at a grocery store on weekends. My parents never asked how much I made or if I was tired. They only cared whether I was tarnishing the perfect image of our family. Every time I brought home a trophy from a football game, I hoped they'd be proud. But no, they'd nod, stash the trophy in a corner of a cabinet, and turn to ask Kyle about his math test. My achievements, no matter how big, were like a fleeting breeze in their eyes. Once I overheard my mother bragging to a neighbor about her talented son. I stood behind the door, my heart pounding, thinking she'd finally recognized my worth. But then she continued, "Kyle's only 12 and already writing poetry, and he's been chosen for the school play." I quietly walked away, feeling something inside me shatter. I didn't blame Kyle. He was just a kid, and he was my brother. But I couldn't understand why my parents treated me like an outsider, as if I wasn't worthy of their love. Still, I didn't give up. Football was my salvation, Every time I stepped onto the field, I fought like it was the last game of my life. I wanted to prove not just to my parents, but to myself, that I was good enough, strong enough to overcome everything. The bruises, the pain, the times I collapsed on the grass only made me more determined. I told myself that if my family didn't need me, I'd create my own worth. When I was 18, I received a football scholarship to a prestigious university. It was the first time I saw my parents smile because of me, but their smiles didn't make me happy. I knew they weren't proud of me. They were just relieved that the scholarship would save them a fortune. They started bragging to friends and neighbors as if they were the ones who'd gotten me there. I gave a faint smile, packed my bags, and left the house that had never felt like home. My college years were when I truly began to live. I no longer had to endure their criticism or see their disappointed looks. I poured my heart into football and academics. The university team became my real family, teammates who stood by me, cheered for me, and respected me. I played with all my passion, and soon I became one of the team's standout players. The big games, the resounding victories, the cheers of the crowd, they fueled me, making me believe I could do anything. But deep down, I still longed for something football couldn't give me: my family's recognition. Every time I called home, my mother would ask superficial questions, and my father would always find a way to bring up Kyle. "Your brother just got elected class president, Harrison. What's new with you?" That question felt like a knife. I could have talked about my touchdowns, my awards, but I knew they didn't care. I'd just say, "I'm fine, Dad," and hang up, trying to hide the pain burning in my chest. Once I invited the whole family to watch a big game at school. I hoped even if just once they'd see me shine and clap for me. But only Kyle showed up, and he spent the entire game texting. My parents made excuses about being busy and didn't come. When I scored the game-winning touchdown and the stadium erupted, I felt empty. I stood on the field looking up at the stands, hoping to see my parents' faces, but there were only strangers cheering. At that moment, I knew I'd have to walk my path alone. My childhood was a time of self-reliance, marked by invisible scars I still carry. But those hardships forged me, shaping me into a man who never gives up. I learned that to earn love and respect, I had to claim it, not from my family, but from life itself. And that's just the beginning of the long story I'm about to tell you. In my junior year of college, at 21, my life turned a new page. One late autumn afternoon, as golden leaves blanketed the campus, my coach called me into his office. He looked at me with pride in his eyes and said, "Harrison, you've been chosen. The St. Louis Storm, a professional football team, wants to sign you." I stood there, stunned, my heart pounding as if the world had slowed down. I had dreamed of this moment since I was a kid, clutching a leather football, running across the backyard. But when the dream became reality, I felt a strange emptiness in my chest. I wanted to call my parents right away, to shout that I'd made it. But deep down, I knew they wouldn't truly care. I signed with the Storm the following week. Everything happened like a whirlwind. From a college student, I stepped into the professional world, where stadium lights blazed and the roar of tens of thousands of fans thundered. Those years, I lived fully on the field. Every game was a battle, every touchdown a declaration that I wasn't the useless kid my parents once thought I was. I played with all my passion, with the determination of someone who'd been looked down on his whole life. And I shone. I became one of the team's standout players, praised by the press, adored by fans. My name appeared on newsreels, in interviews, and on posters plastered across the city. The money started rolling in. The first time I held a check with so many zeros, I sat in my small apartment, staring at it in disbelief. I had once worked tirelessly for a few dollars to buy school supplies. Now, I could buy anything I wanted. But strangely, I didn't feel the happiness I'd imagined. I still remembered my parents' disappointed looks, my father's voice barking, "How stupid are you, Harrison?" I wondered if now, with my success, they'd see me differently. The answer came sooner than I expected. One evening, after returning from a big game, my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was sweet, unlike the cold tone I was used to. "Harrison, I heard you won a big game. I'm so proud of you." I could hardly believe my ears. Proud? Since when did she know that word? I quietly replied, "Thanks, Mom." But inside, a storm of mixed emotions swirled. A few days later, my father called, his voice excited. "Son, we're coming to watch you play this weekend. Kyle, too." I laughed, not out of joy, but because I realized they only showed up now that I was famous. From then on, my parents and Kyle became more present in my life. They came to games, took photos with me in front of crowds, and even bragged to friends about their star son. The trophies and medals I'd won, once tucked away in a cabinet corner, were now proudly displayed in their living room. My mother started telling neighbors about my victories as if she'd always believed in me. My father would slap my shoulder, calling me the family's pride. But every time I heard those words, I felt a bitter taste. I was glad they finally saw me, but I was sad knowing they only cared now that I had money and fame. Once, after a game, I invited the family to dinner at a fancy restaurant. I wanted to create a beautiful memory, to believe our family could mend. But throughout the meal, my parents only talked about things they wanted to buy. A new car, a European vacation, a bigger house. Kyle rambled about his plans to start some company I didn't fully understand. I sat there, listening, but felt like I was in another world. They didn't ask if I was tired, if I felt pressured, or simply if I was happy. They saw me as a money machine, a means to fulfill their lavish dreams. Still, I tried to do my duty. I didn't want to be ungrateful, no matter how they'd treated me. When I was 28, I bought my parents a luxurious $2.5 million house in the St. Louis suburbs, the kind of place they'd always dreamed of living in. I also gave them a brand new car, the kind my father said would make him shine in front of his friends. For Kyle, I gave him $500,000 to start his business, even though I knew he lacked experience. I did these things not to earn their love, but because I thought it was the way to keep the family together. At 30, after a serious knee injury, I decided to retire. I had played football my entire life, given it everything, but my body could no longer withstand the brutal hits. It wasn't an easy decision. Football wasn't just a career, it was my world. But I knew if I didn't stop, I'd destroy myself. I left the field, carrying scars, memories, and the fortune I'd amassed. I turned to business and investing. With the money I'd earned from my playing years, I started investing in real estate, technology, and small startups. I wasn't a business genius, but I had discipline, patience, and most importantly, I wasn't afraid of failure. The years of self-reliance as a kid had taught me that if I wanted something, I had to seize it myself. And I did. Within 2 years, I built a fortune I wouldn't have dared dream of as the newspaper delivery boy in St. Louis. I became a self-made millionaire, relying on no one and depending on nobody. But success, it turns out, didn't just bring glory. It also cast long shadows and drew covetous glances from the very people I called family. My parents, Samuel and Victoria, and my brother Kyle began to change. No, they didn't change. They simply revealed their true faces, the ones I'd willfully ignored for years. In the beginning, I naively thought my wealth would bring us closer, mend the cracks from my childhood. I was wrong. It started with small requests. My mother would call, her voice sweet as honey. "Harrison, I want to throw a grand birthday party for your father. Can you send some money, just a few thousand?" I didn't think twice and transferred the funds. The next week, my father called. "We need a family vacation to unwind, Harrison. Can you cover the plane tickets?" I sent the money. Kyle texted constantly, sometimes asking for funds to expand his company, other times for a watch befitting a business partner. I helped, not because I wanted to show off or buy their affection, but because I thought it was the way to keep our family connected. I had always longed for a real family, and I thought money might be the bridge. But that bridge turned out to be a one-way street. The requests grew more frequent, more extravagant. My mother wanted a Maldives vacation, Not just any hotel, but a 5-star resort. My father dreamed of the latest sports car, to look good in front of friends. Kyle, with the startup I'd funded, spent money like water. Parties, trips, expensive suits. I started to feel uneasy. I wasn't stingy, but I couldn't understand why they thought I was obligated to fulfill their every whim. I had bought my parents a luxurious house, a brand new car. I had given Kyle a substantial sum to start his business. But to them it was never enough. The breaking point came one autumn evening as I sat in my office reviewing financial reports. My phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was brimming with excitement, as if sharing a brilliant idea. "Harrison, your father and I just saw a gorgeous yacht. It's over $10 million, but it's worth every penny. We could all go on a family vacation cruising the seas. What do you think?" I was stunned. $10 million? I had worked tirelessly, shed sweat and blood on the field, and now they wanted me to spend a fortune on a luxury they'd only use to show off. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Mom, I don't think that's a good idea. We don't need a yacht. I can help with more essential things like healthcare or household expenses." Silence. A long, suffocating silence. Then my mother laughed, but it wasn't a joyful laugh. It was laced with sarcasm. "Essential? Harrison, you make all that money and you're being stingy with your family? Don't you want us to be happy?" Before I could respond, my father cut in, his voice sharp. "You're an ungrateful son. We raised you, and this is how you treat your family?" I heard Kyle in the background adding, "You're so selfish, Harrison. I'm ashamed to have a brother like you." The call ended, and I sat there, still holding the phone, feeling as if someone had stabbed me in the heart. From that day, everything changed. My parents started hosting parties and family events without inviting me. I'd get a curt text from my mother, "Send money for the weekend party." No invitation, no questions about how I was doing. Kyle called constantly, his tone alternating between pleading and accusing because his company was drowning in debt. "Just one more loan, I promise I'll pay it back," he said. But I knew the money would vanish into lavish parties or unnecessary purchases. I still sent money, but only for reasonable things. Medical bills for my father's back pain. Utility payments for the house I'd bought them. The extravagant requests I refused, and with every refusal I felt pushed further away. I began to realize a painful truth. My family didn't need me, they needed my money. Every time I turned down an unreasonable demand, my parents called me selfish, ungrateful. My mother once cried over the phone, saying I'd forgotten my roots, that I'd turned my back on the family now that I was successful. My father was blunter. "If it weren't for us, you think you'd be where you are today?" I wanted to scream that they were the ones who had belittled me, called me foolish for playing football, tucked my trophies away in a cabinet corner. But I said nothing. I quietly worked, quietly sent money, and quietly bore the growing loneliness in my heart. Kyle, my brother, hurt me the most. I had believed in him, hoped the capital I gave him would help him build a future, but his company failed spectacularly. He spent money on pointless things, a lavish office, fruitless business trips, parties to impress partners. When the debts piled up, he turned to me begging, "If you don't help, I'll go bankrupt." I looked into his eyes through the video call and no longer saw the little brother who used to make me laugh when we were kids. I saw a stranger, someone who only knew how to use me. I still sent money to help him pay off his debts, but I made it clear. "This is the last time, Kyle. You have to take responsibility." He didn't thank me, he just hung up, and I knew he was angry. As the days passed, I felt like an outsider in my own family. I lived in a luxurious penthouse in downtown St. Louis, surrounded by expensive things, but I had never felt so empty. I began to ask myself, what did I do wrong? Why did I try so hard to make them happy, only to be met with distance and blame? I remembered the days when I was a kid, clutching a football and dreaming of the day my parents would pat my shoulder and say they were proud of me. Now I had everything, money, fame, but I was still that lonely boy, yearning for a family I never truly had. Then, like a ray of light piercing through the darkness, my mother called. Her voice over the phone wasn't cold or demanding as usual. Instead, it carried a gentleness I had almost forgotten. "Harrison, come home for Thanksgiving, will you? We want the whole family to reunite. Kyle's bringing his new girlfriend to introduce her." I sat there, gripping the phone tightly, feeling as if time had stopped. Reunite? After all the accusations, the texts demanding money, the parties I wasn't invited to? A small spark of hope flickered in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, they had realized my worth. Not for my money, but because I was their son, Kyle's brother. My voice cracked with emotion as I replied, "Yes, I'll come." I spent the next week preparing. I wanted this reunion to be meaningful, a turning point for our family. I chose gifts carefully for each of them. For my father, I bought a personalized engraved watch, a refined piece I knew he'd love. For my mother, I selected a silk scarf from a high-end fashion brand, something she'd once coveted while passing a store with me. For Kyle, I picked a set of premium fountain pens, hoping they'd inspire him to take his work more seriously. And for Kyle's new girlfriend, someone I'd never met, I chose an elegant bottle of perfume, paired with a handwritten card welcoming her to the family. I wrapped each gift meticulously, imagining us gathered around the dinner table, laughing, sharing like any normal family. For the first time in years, I felt a lightness in my heart, as if a door had opened. Thanksgiving arrived, and I drove to the suburban St. Louis house, the one I'd bought for my parents. As I stepped inside, the aroma of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie enveloped me. The house was beautifully decorated, warm golden lights glowing, the dining table set like a royal feast. My mother rushed to hug me, her eyes sparkling. "Harrison, you're here. I'm so glad." My father clapped me on the shoulder, a wide smile on his face. "You look strong, son. Come in, everyone's waiting." Kyle appeared, towing a stunning young woman. "Bro, this is Danielle, my girlfriend," he introduced, his voice brimming with pride. Danielle smiled, her eyes sharp, her blonde hair shimmering under the lights. She shook my hand, her voice sweet. "So nice to meet you. Kyle's told me so much about you." I smiled back, but something in her gaze sent a shiver through me. I brushed it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. The dinner began in a warm atmosphere. My parents kept piling food onto my plate, asking about my work, my life downtown. Kyle shared funny stories, making the table erupt in laughter. Danielle sat beside him, occasionally adding witty remarks that delighted my mother. I sat there, holding a glass of wine, feeling like I was living in a dream. For the first time in years, my family felt like a real family. I began to think that maybe the past was behind us. Maybe this was our chance to start anew. But then things started to feel strange. My mother kept refilling my wine glass, her voice overly sweet. "Drink up, Harrison, it's a happy day." My father joined in, clinking glasses with me repeatedly. Kyle laughed loudly, spinning tales about the good old days, but I noticed he was dragging out the stories as if trying to keep me drinking. Danielle, meanwhile, kept glancing at me with an odd look, part seductive, part probing. I started to feel uneasy, but I didn't want to ruin the mood. I told myself I was overthinking. The wine, after all, was making my head a bit fuzzy. Halfway through the meal, I felt a strange heat coursing through my body. My heart raced, my mind grew hazy, and an unfamiliar sensation like a wave of desire began to rise. I tried to stay calm, telling myself it was just the wine, but the feeling intensified, making me uncomfortable. I set my glass down, trying to focus on Kyle's story, but everything around me seemed to blur. Just then my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "There's something dangerous in the wine. Get up now or you'll regret it." I froze, staring at the screen. My heart pounded, not from the wine anymore, but from panic. Who sent this? And what was the dangerous substance? I glanced around the table. My mother was laughing with Danielle. My father was serving himself more turkey. Kyle was animatedly telling a story. Everything looked normal, but the text was like an alarm bell in my head. I tried to stand, but my legs trembled, my body burning. Danielle suddenly placed her hand on mine, her voice syrupy. "Harrison, are you okay? You look a bit tired. Have some more wine, it'll help." She pushed the glass toward me, her eyes glinting with a mischief I couldn't ignore. I shook my head, pushing the glass away. "I'm fine," I said, my voice shaky. "Just need to use the bathroom." I stood, struggling to keep my steps steady, and headed toward the hallway. My mind spun, not just from the strange sensation in my body, but from the growing suspicion. Something was wrong. I knew it. When I reached the bathroom and locked the door, I leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths to steady myself. Was the text real or just a prank? And if it was real, who sent it? Who in this house was trying to warn me? I stared into the mirror, my face flushed, sweat beading on my forehead. The burning sensation in my body wouldn't subside, like a smoldering fire spreading through me, making me restless and out of control. My heart pounded, not just from whatever cursed drug I suspected had been slipped into my wine, but from the gnawing dread tearing at my chest. My family, the people I'd spent my life trying to please, could they really be plotting to harm me? The thought cut like a knife, but I couldn't dismiss it. Just then, a soft, almost timid knock came at the door. I flinched, still clutching my phone, the text from the unknown number glowing on the screen. I opened the door, bracing myself to face anyone, maybe Kyle or even Danielle with her fake smile. But standing before me was Claudia, the family's maid. She wore a simple apron, her dark hair neatly tied back, her eyes filled with worry. I'd never spoken much with Claudia, but I remembered always treating her kindly. A thank you when she cleaned, a bonus during the holidays, or sometimes just a smile when she brought me coffee. To me, those were small gestures, but now, looking into her eyes, I knew something serious was about to unfold. "Mr. Harrison," Claudia whispered, her voice trembling, her eyes darting behind her as if afraid someone might overhear. "You need to leave now. They put something in your wine." I froze, feeling the floor drop out from under me. "Something? What are you talking about? Who did it?" I asked, my voice faltering with panic. Claudia stepped inside, closing the bathroom door, and pulled an old phone from her apron pocket. She opened a recording, handed it to me, and gestured for me to listen. I pressed the phone to my ear, and what I heard made my blood run cold. My mother's voice, cold and calculating, came through clearly. "As long as he drinks enough wine, the drug will take effect. Danielle knows how to make him lose control." Then Kyle's voice, smug and gleeful. "Don't worry, Mom. She'll seduce him into bed. We just need to record the video, and Harrison will pay millions to protect his reputation." My father chimed in, his voice low but sharp. "He's a millionaire. A few million is nothing to him. If he doesn't pay, we leak the video online. He'll lose everything." I stood there, my hands shaking, feeling as if my heart was being crushed. My family, the people I'd loved, sacrificed for, tried to please, had planned to ruin me. They didn't just want my money, they wanted to destroy my dignity, to turn me into their puppet. I looked at Claudia, searching for words, but my throat tightened. Why are you helping me?" I asked, my voice hoarse, barely audible even to myself. Claudia pressed her lips together, her eyes filled with compassion but also resolve. "Because you're the only one in this house who's ever treated me like a human being," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I've worked here for 3 years, and I've seen how they treat you. They exploit you, humiliate you, call you selfish just because you don't meet their every demand. You deserve better, Mr. Harrison." I stood speechless, unsure how to respond. Claudia's words were like a cold wind clearing the fog in my mind. I thought back to the times my mother called me ungrateful, the times my father scolded me for not supporting the family, the times Kyle looked at me like I owed him the world. And I realized Claudia was right. I'd spent my life trying to please people who never valued me, and now they were ready to push me into an abyss just for their greed. How did you get this recording? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady as anger boiled in my chest. Claudia spoke quickly, her voice low to avoid being overheard. She explained that a few days ago she'd overheard a conversation between my mother and Kyle in the living room when they thought no one was around. She'd secretly recorded it with her phone because she felt uneasy. I didn't know what they were planning, she said. But when I heard them mention Danielle in the video scheme, I knew I had to warn you. I sent the text from a burner number because I was afraid they'd find out. I looked into Claudia's eyes and for the first time saw a sincerity I'd never found in my own family. She, a maid my parents barely bothered to know by name, had risked everything to save me. I gripped the phone tightly, the recording like a sharp weapon in my hand. "Thank you, Claudia," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "You don't know how much this means to me." She nodded, her eyes full of concern. "Be careful. They're waiting for you out there. Danielle, she was hired to seduce you. Don't let her get close." I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the anger and pain surging within me. My body still burned, my mind foggy from the damn drug they'd slipped into my wine. But now, I was no longer prey. I knew the truth, and I wouldn't let them manipulate me anymore. "I'll handle it," I told Claudia, my voice firmer than I expected. "Act normal, don't let them suspect anything. I'll take care of the rest." Claudia nodded and slipped out quietly, leaving me alone in the bathroom. I stood there, staring into the mirror, trying to gather my thoughts. The anger inside me grew, but I knew I had to stay calm. If I confronted them now in this state, I might lose control. The drug, likely an aphrodisiac, was still making me dizzy, clouding my focus. I splashed cold water on my face again, trying to quell the heat coursing through me. I needed a plan. I opened my phone, saved the recording to an email, and sent it to myself as a precaution in case Claudia's phone was taken. Then I texted a trusted friend, a lawyer I could rely on, briefly explaining the situation and attaching the recording. "If anything happens to me tonight, this is evidence," I wrote. I didn't know if I was being overly cautious, but I wasn't taking any chances. Not anymore. The burning sensation in my body lingered, but I forced myself to stay alert. My mind reeled, not just from the damn drug my family had slipped into my wine, but from the horrific truth Claudia had just revealed. My parents, Samuel and Victoria, and my brother Kyle had plotted to blackmail me, to turn me into a puppet, to extort money and ruin my reputation. But they had underestimated me. I was no longer the naive kid who craved their approval. I was Harrison Price, a man who had risen from tough times on his own, and I wouldn't let anyone, not even my family, drag me down. I took a deep breath, adjusted my shirt, and stepped out of the bathroom. I hoped my face still carried the look of someone slightly drunk, my eyes glazed to mask the rage boiling inside. I returned to the dining table where the warm golden lights now seemed like a veneer hiding their deceit. My mother looked at me, her smile syrupy. "Are you okay, Harrison?" I was so worried. Kyle raised his glass, his voice enthusiastic. "Have another drink, bro." The night's still young. Danielle, the woman hired to trap me, leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "You look a bit tired, Harrison. Need me to get you anything?" I gave a faint smile, my hand tightening in my pocket around the phone holding Claudia's recording. "I'm fine," I said, deliberately slurring my words to make them think I was still under the influence. I sipped some water, pretending it was wine, and watched them closely. My mother kept piling food onto my plate, her voice sweet as honey. "Eat more, dear. I made this for you." My father recounted an old story, trying to seem affectionate. Kyle and Danielle exchanged glances as if checking whether their plan was on track. I noticed Danielle's gaze, the way she lightly brushed my hand, her seductive smile calculated. I knew what she was doing. They thought I'd fallen into their trap, that the drug and the wine would make me lose control. But they didn't know I was already aware of everything. The heat in my body persisted, but I gritted my teeth and endured. I needed time to strategize. I needed them to let their guard down, to believe I was drunk and vulnerable. I faked a long yawn, rubbing my forehead. Must be the strong wine. I'm feeling a bit tired. Might need to rest upstairs for a bit. My mother immediately feigned concern. Oh, sweetheart, are you okay? Go rest. I'll have Claudia bring you some water. Kyle laughed loudly, clapping my shoulder. You're such a lightweight man, done in by a few glasses. Danielle stood up instantly, her voice sugary. Let me take you upstairs, Harrison. You shouldn't go alone. I nodded, pretending to wobble as I stood, letting Danielle take my arm. She guided me up the stairs, her hand gently around my waist, whispering, Are you really that tired? I'll take care of you. I could hear the falseness in every word, but I let her lead me. I needed her alone, to confirm she was part of this plot. When we reached my old bedroom, a room my mother had kept unchanged since I was a kid, Danielle closed the door, her demeanor shifting. Gone was the feigned concern, replaced by blatant seduction as she stepped closer, placing a hand on my chest. Harrison, you're so stressed. Let me help you relax, she said, her voice dripping with honey. But I heard the calculation beneath it. I stepped back, pretending to stumble, but my eyes were cold. Who are you, Danielle? I asked, my voice low but firm. She froze, her smile faltering. What are you talking about? I'm Kyle's girlfriend. I let out a dry laugh. Stop pretending. I know you're not Kyle's girlfriend. You were hired, weren't you? To do what? Seduce me, record a video, blackmail me? Danielle's face paled, but she tried to stay composed. You're drunk, Harrison. What are you saying? I just want to help. I stepped closer, my voice like ice. Stop acting. I have proof. I pulled out my phone, played Claudia's recording, and let the voices of my mother, Kyle, and father fill the room. Their vile plan laid bare like daggers in the air. Danielle stood frozen, her eyes wide, but she still tried to deny it. That's fake. You made it up to scare me, didn't you? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I scanned the room. If they planned to record a video, there had to be a camera. I walked to a corner where an unfamiliar old table lamp stood. I bent down, inspected it, and sure enough, a tiny camera was cleverly hidden inside. I pulled it out and held it up to Danielle. Fake, you say? Then what's this? She panicked, stepping back, but I blocked the door. You have one chance to tell the truth, Danielle. Otherwise, I'm calling the police right now. Trembling, Danielle finally dropped the facade. Okay, she stammered, her voice shaking. I'm an escort hired by Kyle. They paid me $100,000 to seduce you, to record a video of you with me. They said with the video you'd pay anything to protect your reputation. I stood there, listening to her words, feeling as if my heart was being torn apart. But I didn't let my emotions take over. Thank you for being honest, I said, my voice eerily calm. Now come with me. I opened the door, gesturing for Danielle to go downstairs first. She hesitated, but my gaze left her no choice. We descended the stairs back to the dining room where my parents and Kyle were laughing, as if everything was going according to plan. When they saw me with Danielle, their smiles froze. My mother spoke first, her voice tinged with worry. Harrison, are you okay? Kyle frowned, his eyes darting between me and Danielle, trying to read the situation. I stood in the middle of the dining room, the golden lights illuminating their faces. The faces I'd once loved, hoped would love me back. You all put on a great show, I said, my voice low but sharp. But the performance ends here. I pulled out my phone and played Claudia's recording. Their cruel words filled the room, exposing their scheme. My mother gasped, dropping her wine glass. My father's face turned ashen, his hands gripping the table. Kyle jumped up, shouting, What is this? Who recorded this? Shut up, Kyle, I snapped, my voice silencing the room. I've heard enough. You drugged my wine, hired her, I pointed at Danielle, to trap me, to record a video and blackmail me. Did you think I was too stupid to notice? My mother tried to deny it. Harrison, you've misunderstood. How could I do that to you? But I held up the hidden camera, my gaze icy. Misunderstood? Then what's this? And the wine, I'll have it tested. If you want, I can call the police right now. Panic swept over them. Kyle stammered, "Don't overreact, man, we're family." My mother sobbed, but I no longer trusted her tears. "Family?" I scoffed. "Family doesn't betray each other for money. You don't deserve to be my family." I paused, taking a deep breath, then said the words that would change everything. "As of today, I'm taking back everything I've given you. This house in my name will be sold. The car, too. Kyle, I'm done paying your debts. You want to live your lives, figure it out yourselves." My mother pleaded, her voice shrill. "You can't do this. You're my son." My father slammed the table. "You dare kick your parents out of their home?" Kyle lunged, trying to grab my phone, but I pushed him back. Danielle stood silent, her face pale, saying nothing. I looked at them, the people I'd once called family, and saw only greed and deceit. "You chose this path," I said, my voice calm but resolute. "I gave you everything, but you only wanted more. Now it's over." I turned to Claudia, who stood quietly in the corner, her eyes filled with both worry and resolve. "Claudia, come with me," I said. She nodded and followed without a word. I grabbed my car keys, opened the door, and walked out of the house I'd once hoped would unite our family. Behind me, I heard my mother's wails, my father's curses, Kyle's shouts, and Danielle's feeble attempts to explain. But I didn't look back. I'd given them too many chances, and they'd thrown them all away. As I sat in the car with Claudia beside me, a strange sense of relief washed over me. The heat in my body had subsided, but the pain in my heart lingered. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. I was no longer anyone's puppet, and as I pressed the gas pedal, leaving that house of deceit behind, I knew I had won, not because of money, but because I had held on to myself. The car glided down the dark road, the faint glow of streetlights reflecting off the windshield. Claudia sat silently, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, as if still anxious about something. I glanced at her, wanting to thank her again, but my throat tightened. Instead, I simply asked, "Are you okay, Claudia?" She nodded, offering a faint smile. "I'm fine, Mr. Harrison. It's just, I never thought things would go this far." I nodded, not responding. I too had never imagined that my family, people I'd loved and sacrificed everything for, could betray me so cruelly. In the days that followed, I began to follow through on what I'd declared. I contacted my lawyer, sending Claudia's recording and Danielle's confession as evidence. The house in suburban St. Louis, the luxury car, all were in my name, and I decided to sell them. I didn't do this out of spite, but because I realized I could no longer support people who only exploited me. I informed my parents through a short, cold letter mirroring the way they'd treated me. "The house and car will be repossessed. You're on your own from now on." I didn't wait for a reply, didn't expect their pleas or accusations. I'd heard enough. My parents, Samuel and Victoria, fell into hardship faster than I'd expected. The house, where they'd thrown lavish parties to show off to friends, was sold within weeks. I wasn't there when they moved out, but I heard my mother sobbed, and my father cursed, calling me an ungrateful son. They relocated to a small, rundown apartment in the old neighborhood they'd once despised. The luxury car, my father's pride, was repossessed. I pictured him watching it get towed away, his face red with anger and shame. They returned to the impoverished life they'd tried to escape by exploiting me. I didn't feel vindicated, only a deep sadness. They were once my family, but now they were just faint shadows of my past. Kyle, my brother, fared even worse. His startup, the one I'd funded hoping he'd mature, collapsed entirely. The debts from his reckless spending to sustain a lavish lifestyle became an unbearable burden. Kyle declared bankruptcy, but it didn't save him from creditors. I heard he took a job washing cars in the suburbs, a job I'd done as a kid. I imagined Kyle, his once expensive suits now wrinkled, standing under the scorching sun, hose in hand, his face full of bitterness. He'd called me selfish, thought I owed him everything. Now he had nothing but debts and belated regret. The family bond I'd fought to preserve for years was now irreparably broken. News of the incident spread quickly in the community. St. Louis isn't a big city, and stories like this always stir up gossip. Neighbors, old friends, even those who once flattered my parents now whispered behind their backs. "The Price family. Who would have thought they'd stoop so low?" they said, trying to trap their own son for money. My mother, once proud to brag about her star son, now avoided leaving the house out of shame. My father, who always cared about appearances, kept to himself in their cramped apartment. Kyle's friends turned their backs on him. The people who once partied with him now ignored his texts. They earned a reputation not just for their sordid plan, but for how they'd treated me. A man the community knew as a kind former athlete, a self-made millionaire who helped others. Meanwhile, I preserved my reputation. Thanks to Claudia's vigilance and kindness, I escaped the trap my family had set. The press, always eager for drama, tried to dig into the story, but I stayed silent. I didn't need to justify or explain myself. The recording, Danielle's confession, and the truth spoke for themselves. Those who knew me, former teammates, business partners, friends, stood by me. They called, texted, saying they respected me for not letting myself be manipulated. "You're strong, Harrison," an old teammate said. "I don't know what I'd do if my family betrayed me like that." I smiled, thanked them, but inside I still felt hollow. My reputation might be intact, but the scars on my soul wouldn't heal easily. In the days following the incident, I often thought about Claudia. She, a simple maid, had risked everything to save me. While my family, the people I'd loved most, were willing to betray me for money, Claudia, practically a stranger, chose to stand on the side of truth. I couldn't forget her eyes in the bathroom that Thanksgiving night, filled with worry but also resolute, as if she knew she was doing the right thing. I owed her so much, not just for saving my reputation, but for showing me that there were still kind people in the world. One afternoon, I invited Claudia to my penthouse in downtown St. Louis. I wanted to thank her properly, not just with words. When she walked in, wearing a simple sweater, her dark hair neatly tied back, I realized how different she was from the glamorous people I'd encountered in my world. No makeup, no extravagant dresses, but her smile was warm and genuine, like sunlight filtering through a window on a cold winter day. "You didn't have to do this, Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice shy as I invited her to sit. "I just did what I thought was right." "No, Claudia," I replied, my tone serious. "You saved me. Not just from that trap, but from losing faith in people. I want to repay you." I offered her a substantial sum, enough to start a new life, but Claudia shook her head. "I didn't help you for money," she said, her eyes shining with conviction. "I just wanted you to be safe." I insisted, and after some gentle back and forth, she agreed to accept a smaller amount to cover her education. She shared that she'd once dreamed of becoming a nurse, but her low-paying job at my parents' house had forced her to put that dream on hold. I felt a weight lift from my heart, knowing I could help her, even if it was a small gesture compared to what she'd done for me. From that day, Claudia and I began talking more. I invited her for coffee, initially just to express my gratitude, but those meetings became an essential part of my life. Claudia was unlike anyone I'd ever met. She wasn't swayed by the allure of money or fame. She told me about her childhood, growing up in a poor family on the outskirts of town, working tirelessly to help her mother pay off debts. She was unpretentious, authentic, and every word she spoke was sincere, as if she had nothing to hide. I found myself drawn to her simplicity, to the way she viewed the world with an open heart despite the hardships she'd faced. Our conversations stretched for hours, from small coffee shops to quiet parks in St. Louis. I told her about my days playing football, about the scars on my body and in my soul. She listened without judgment, without blame, just nodding and sometimes holding my hand when I spoke of painful memories. "You're stronger than you think, Harrison," she said once when I recounted how my parents belittled me. "Not everyone could overcome what you've been through." Her words, simple yet heartfelt, were like a balm for wounds I thought would never heal. As time passed, Claudia and I grew closer. I realized she wasn't just the woman who saved me, but someone who made me want to live better, love better. One evening, as we walked along the Mississippi River, the city lights shimmering on the water, I took her hand and said, "Claudia, did you ever think we'd end up here like this?" She laughed, her hair fluttering in the breeze. "Never, but I'm glad we did." I looked into her eyes, and for the first time in years my heart raced, not with anger or pain, but with a warm, peaceful feeling. I proposed to Claudia a year later during a quiet evening at a small restaurant she loved. I didn't choose a lavish venue or make a spectacle, just the two of us with a simple ring I knew she'd cherish. When I knelt down, she covered her mouth, her eyes welling up. "Harrison, are you sure? I'm just me, an ordinary girl." I took her hand, my voice steady. "You're not ordinary, Claudia. You're the most extraordinary person I've ever met." She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks, and we embraced under the dim lights, amid applause from strangers in the restaurant. We married in a small ceremony, attended only by a few close friends and former colleagues. My parents and Kyle weren't invited, and they didn't reach out to me either. I heard they were still living in their rundown apartment in the suburbs, mired in debt and disgrace. Part of me still ached when I thought of them, but I no longer let them drag me down. Claudia taught me that family isn't about blood, but about those who stand by you, who love you for who you are. We moved into a new home, not overly large, but cozy and filled with laughter. Claudia resumed her studies, pursuing her dream of becoming a nurse, and I supported her every step of the way. I continued my business ventures, but now with a clearer purpose, not just to succeed, but to build a meaningful life for Claudia and me. Together we did charity work, helping those in need. And each time I saw their smiles, I thought of Claudia, the one who reminded me that kindness is the most precious thing in the world. One evening I sat in the living room of our new home, Claudia resting her head on my shoulder as we watched an old movie. The golden glow of the table lamp illuminated her gentle smile. I held her hand, our fingers intertwined, and felt a peace I'd never known. I looked around the room, at the photos of us on the shelf, the small piano Claudia loved to play, and the puppy we'd recently adopted curled up in the corner. This was home. This was family. This was everything I'd ever dreamed of. The past full of betrayal, my parents' accusations, Kyle's greed, the trap on Thanksgiving night, was now a distant nightmare. I left it behind, not because I forgot, but because I chose to live for the present, for those who deserved it. I looked at Claudia, the woman who saved me, not just from my family's scheme, but from the loneliness I'd carried for years. I smiled, squeezed her hand, and whispered, "Thank you for everything." She looked up, her eyes sparkling. "Thank you for giving me a home." I had lost a family, but in return I found freedom. And more importantly, I found the love of my life. To me, that was the greatest victory.